Hello all, welcome you to the course on corporate laws and governance. In this video, we are going to look at the introduction to corporate governance. First, let's look at the meaning of corporate governance. Corporate governance is about the rules, regulations, processes, practices which the company follows in order to run the organization. The purpose of the corporate governance is to create a very strong relationship between the owners of the companies, who are the shareholders of the company, the board of directors, management and various stakeholders like the employee, supplier, government, general public, intermediaries, etc. Corporate governance is all about the company running the business in the legal manner. When we say legal manner, the company has to follow all the rules and regulations which the government and the regulatory environment specifies, and they will have to adopt ethical practice while conducting the business, and they have to conduct their business in the transparent manner. Now let us look at the principles of corporate governance. The first principle that we are going to look at is accountability. Accountability is about making somebody responsible for their actions. Here, in the case of a company, the management is accountable to the board of directors. Similarly, board of directors are accountable to the shareholders. This particular principle ensures that the management and the board of directors would be held responsible for any of their action if it is going to be against the interest of the shareholders. This gives a sense of trust among the shareholders, because they know, like, if the management or the board of directors are going to involve themselves in any kind of activity that is against the interest of the owners, then they would be held responsible for these actions. The next principle what we have is fairness. Fairness is about giving the right to the owners or the investors or the shareholders to raise any kind of concerns when there is a violation of their rights. So here the fairness also includes, it is about treating all the shareholders equally. The company should not give any kind of preferential treatment to any of a specific class of shareholders. All the shareholders should be treated equally, and the shareholders are given the right to raise their concern or raise their grievances when there is going to be any kind of violation of their rights. The next principle that we are going to look at is transparency. The transparency is to do with being transparent in the activities of the organization. The company has to be transparent with respect to the way in which it runs the business. They will have to give the details about their financial performance, financial condition, ownership, not only to the shareholders but also to all the stakeholders. So when there is going to be transparency, the company would be ready with any kind of documents whenever any external audit team or any kind of agency asks for data, because they have been doing all the activities in such a manner that it is visible to all the stakeholders, and it also improves the credibility of the organization as they give all the details with respect to the way they run the business. Next principle of corporate governance is to do with independence. Here, when we talk about independence, we are talking about how the board of directors are going to operate independently when the decisions are made for the company. Board of directors should not get influenced by any of the other parties. There should not be any kind of conflict of interest when the company enters into a contract with the outsiders. And whenever there is going to be any conflict of interest, then the director who is part of it should not involve in that particular contract, and they should not take any decision any decision in their favor which actually favors their interest. Whatever decision that the board of directors take, it should be in the interest of the shareholder. So that is what this particular principle is all about. Next principle that we have is to do with social responsibility. Here every company is expected to address the social issues that every community, every locality and every economy faces. Because we all know that corporate social responsibility has become mandatory as per the Companies Act 2013 in India. And the moment a company passes a threshold level, then they are expected to contribute to the society, and they are expected to contribute 2% of their net profit of the 3 preceding accounting year as such. So social responsibility also is one of the important principle which makes up the corporate governance. Now let's look at the importance of corporate governance. The first one is to do with the changing ownership structure. Nowadays, the role of the financial institutions and the mutual funds are actually growing, and many financial institutions are making huge investments in different companies, and these mutual funds and the financial institutions expect the organization to take decisions in such a manner that it protects the interest of the customers, suppliers, intermediaries, employees, as well as the shareholders. So somewhere down the line, the companies are compelled to follow the corporate governance principle while running the company, as these majority shareholders expect the company to be run in a professional manner. The next is to do with the importance of corporate social responsibility. Since corporate social responsibility has become a compulsion, it has become a rule, it has become a law, then in order to be socially responsible, the company should have the corporate governance in place. So corporate social responsibility is possible for a company only when it runs the company by following the governance principle. The reason being, first, the company has to take care of the economic aspects of running the business. Then they have to follow all the rules and regulations that they are expected to follow by the regulatory authorities. Then they will have to conduct the business in the most ethical way. Then when they are going to satisfy all these aspects, then comes the corporate social responsibility. So if we look at it, the foundation for the corporate social responsibility is about following the corporate governance by the companies. The next is about the number of scams that are happening in almost all the countries. We have had different scams like the WorldCom, Enron, Lehman Brothers. If we look at India, we have seen different types of scams like the Harshad Mehta scam, Satyam scandal, Kingfisher Airlines default. All these scams, if you look at the base of it, it is mainly due to the corporate governance failure. So in order to avoid all these scams, it is important for a company to follow the principles of corporate governance, like being transparent in their operation, separating the ownership from management, being accountable for all of their actions, being fair to the shareholders as well as the other stakeholders. All these have to be followed. If they are going to follow these principles, then the number of financial frauds that happens would drastically come down. The next is about the indifference on the part of the shareholders. Nowadays, most of the companies, they are publicly listed, and if we look at the shareholders are dispersed, and there are many number of shareholders, and the ownership is dispersed in nature, and most of the shareholders do not spend more time in attending the annual general meeting. They may be sending their proxies. If the proxies are sent, the proxies cannot share their views in the annual general meeting. So somewhere down the line, the shareholders do not show interest in taking part in the activities of the organization. When we talk about that, it is about participating in the annual general meeting and participating in the different oaths that happens in the annual general meeting. So it is mandatory that the company should run based on the corporate governance principle. Once the company is going to be run based on corporate governance principle, the interest of these shareholders would automatically be protected. The next is about globalization. We all know that world has become a global village, and all the economies are interconnected. Here somewhere down the line, since all the countries company have presence in different countries, if the companies are going to follow the corporate governance principle, then it would be easy for them to trade, to sell their products in different countries, because following the corporate governance principle, a company being good in its corporate governance means creating trust in the minds of the investors. It's going to create credibility in the about the company. So this is going to have a very positive impression on the global investors and the global stakeholders. The next reason why a company should follow the corporate governance principle is mainly due to the many number of takeovers and mergers that happens. Since many takeovers and mergers happen, it should be ensured that these companies that are getting taken over or getting merged are following the corporate governance principle in order to protect the interest of the shareholders. Now let's look at the benefits of corporate governance. The first benefit that we have when the company is going to have very good governance is the corporate performance. Here the company is following the transparent way of conducting the business. They are transparent about their financial condition. They divulge their ownership details, and people, the stakeholders know the best management practices of the company. When there is going to be transparency in the operation of the company, what happens is automatically the performance of the financial performance of the company also improves, because it creates credibility and it creates trust on the various stockholders as well as the stakeholders. The next benefit that the company would be having is the enhanced investor trust. The investor, before investing in the company, they would definitely look at how good the governance is in that particular company and how transparent the company is in its operation. They would be checking about the board of directors composition, the number of independent directors that they have. So when they are going to be happy with the way in which the company is governed, automatically their trust level will increase and they would be interested in investing in the company. One of the survey that's been done by McKinsey revealed that the investors do not mind paying a very high premium for the share prices of the company which is governed well. The next is the easy finance from the institutions. The moment a company is going to have very good governance, automatically the financial institutions will have a better credit score for these companies. When they are going to have a better credit score, automatically there would be ease with which these companies would be getting their loans from the different financial institutions, which are very, very important for the expansion and the growth of the company. Next is about enhancing the enterprise value. When all the stakeholders are going to be happy with the way in which the company is governed, automatically many would be investing in this particular company. The share price of the company would be going up, and since they are getting more finance from the financial institutions and other banks, automatically the company would be growing and expanding, which will eventually result in better enterprise value. The next important benefit that we have is the reduced risk of corporate crisis and scandals. Since the companies are going to be very transparent in their operation, since they are going to be ready with all the documents which would be asked by any of the external agencies or the audit, automatically the number of financial irregularities that may happen in the company would come down because in order to, since the operations are transparent, the possibility of people mismanaging the fund or diverting the fund for their own interest, all that would be drastically curbed. So automatically the number of scandals that we are going to have in different companies would be coming down. The next advantage is to do with the access to the global market. In order to be part of the global market, a company has to be run based on the corporate governance principle. Only then they will have a credibility among the global investors, and many investors would be ready to invest in the business, and many intermediaries as well as the supplier would be ready to connect with the company. So in order to have a better presence globally, a company should actually follow good governance. The next benefit that we have is when all the companies are, or most of the companies for that matter, are going to follow the governance principle, the economy would be growing, for the reason that these companies would be doing good in the stock market, and not only that, their corporate performance would also be increasing, the productivity will increase. Ultimately, the gross domestic product in the economy would go up. The number of scams and the financial irregularities will also come down, which will give a very good outlook about the economy, not only to the investors within the economy and also to the foreign institutional investors. So this will also result in inflow of foreign institutional investment, and this is going to help the economy in many ways, even in bringing the foreign exchange. Next, let's look at what are all the responsibilities of the board of directors. The first responsibility that the board of directors have is to establish the corporate values and the government structures in the company. They will have to ensure that the company follows all the legal and the regulatory requirements in a very timely fashion. They should also establish long-term strategic objectives for the company. They should appoint the chief executive officers. They should fix the remuneration for the chief executive officers, and also they should periodically evaluate how these chief executive officers perform. Another responsibility that the board of directors have is to establish the clear line of responsibility. They will have to establish a proper system of accountability and performance measurement for the company. The board of directors should ensure that they get enough information from the company and the management before they take any kind of decisions. The decisions that they take should be data driven. It should be an informed decision so that the things do not go bad when they take decisions. The board of directors are expected to meet very regularly, and they will have to work for the betterment of the company, and they also have to acquire the different skills. They have to keep themselves updated so that they can share their inputs for the effective functioning of the organization. Now let's look at the system of corporate governance. There are two types or two systems of corporate governance. One is the insider dominated corporate governance system. Another is the outsider dominated corporate governance system. What is this insider dominated corporate governance system? When we look at the ownership, in the case of insider dominated corporate governance system, few shareholders would be having majority of the shareholding, though the companies are publicly listed. These companies are listed in the stock exchanges. Despite that, majority or major portion of the shareholding would be in the hands of the few shareholders. That is how the ownership exist in the case of insider dominated corporate governance system. But when we look at this outsider dominated corporate governance system, ownership is pretty dispersed in nature, in the sense these companies are publicly listed. They are listed in the stock exchanges, and if we look at the number of shareholders, the number of shareholders are large in number. So there are not few people who would be dominating and taking decisions for the company. So when we look at the liquidity position of these companies in the capital market, in the case of insider dominated corporate governance system, these companies would not be that liquid in the capital market, for the reason majority of the shares are held by few people, and so as a result of which their possibility of takeover is very, very less in the case of insider dominated corporate governance system. But in the case of outsider dominated corporate governance system, the shares are traded in the capital market, in the stock market, and they are highly liquid in nature, for the reason this shareholding pattern is dispersed, and there is a frequent buying and selling of the shares in the stock market. So the possibility of takeover is very high in the case of outsider dominated corporate governance system. When we look at the concentration of ownership, the ownership is in the hands of few people in the case of insider dominated corporate governance system. Normally what happens, the founder members, they would be having the major portion of the shareholding, or what happens, some other company would be holding major portion of the shareholding of that particular company, which we call it as cross holding by another company. So as a result of which, what happens, we always talk about a problem called agency problem. The agency problem will not be there in the case of insider dominated corporate governance system, for the reason only few people have the major shareholding. But in the case of outsider dominated corporate governance system, the concentration of ownership is not closed. It is pretty wide in nature, as a result of which the board of directors and the management would be having a better say in the activities of the company. So as a result of which, there are chances there would be agency problem. So if we look at this insider dominated corporate governance system, there is no separation of management from ownership. But in the case of outsider dominated corporate governance system, there is separation of ownership from management. So that is there. So if we look at the kind of movement of the shares from the minority shareholders to the majority shareholders is more in the case of insider dominated corporate governance system. But if we look at the outsider dominated corporate governance system, the movement of shares from the minority shareholders to the majority shareholders is very, very less. So somewhere down the line, in the case of insider dominated corporate governance system, there are possibilities that the few owners, the few people who have the major share, they may be misusing their power, as they have a major say in all the activities of the company. But such kind of misuse of power will not be there in the case of outsider dominated corporate governance system. When we look at the investors protection, this investors protection law in the company law is very weak for the insider dominated corporate governance system, but the investors protection in the company law is very strong in the case of outsider dominated corporate governance system. This kind of insider dominated corporate governance system is very much prevalent in the companies that are there in Germany and Japan. Next, let's look at the theories of corporate governance. The first theory that we are going to look at is the agency theory. As per this agency theory, we all know that board of directors and the management work on behalf of the shareholders, who are the owners of the company. And so here in this scenario, the board of directors and the managers or the executives of the company are considered as the agents to the shareholders, and the shareholders are considered as the principal. So normally agents are expected to work for the principal, but there are chances these agents would be working in favor of their interest. They may be working against the interest of the owners or the shareholders. That may happen in the sense when these managers, executives are going to improve their working condition within the organization, or when they are trying to have a more and more salary, or when they try to have a better status, when they try to do all these things. So we can say that they are acting against the interest of the shareholders. So this kind of problem, agency problem, is there between the shareholders and the board of directors and the management. So agency theory feels that somewhere down the line there is a possibility that the agents may go against the interest of the principal, the shareholders. So the shareholders should be alert enough, the owners should be alert enough, and they should keep checking whether these agents or for that matter board of directors and the management are working as per their expectations, and which is called as wealth maximization. Next theory what we have is stewardship theory. If you ask for the stewardship theory, what they feel is, of course, there is an agency and principal relationship between the management, board of directors and the shareholders, and these people know that they have to follow the expectations of the shareholders. So here the leaders are, the owners are, they have a better say, and these people, the board of directors and the managers and executives, they always try working for the interest of these shareholders. Next, let's look at the resource dependency theory. As per this resource dependency theory, every company is dependent on different types of resources in the external environment. Every company requires the material resources, human resources, they require financial resources. For all these resources, they are dependent on the external environment. They will have to hire employees from the outside world. They will have to procure funds from the banks, financial institutions, stock market, debt market, so on and so forth. They will have to procure the materials from the suppliers. So basically what happens, they are dependent on the external environment for their resources. Since they are dependent, here what these managers and the executives should do is, they should ensure that they have a strategic advantage in all these relationships that they are going to have, right? Whenever they are going to procure the human resources, material resources or the financial resources, they should always strive to have the strategic advantage over the other party, so that they will have a better deal in their negotiation with all these people. How can they achieve this kind of strategic advantage? Normally the companies can achieve this advantage when they are going to expand the market, when they are going to expand their market, or when they go for diversification, or when they start developing new products and services. Automatically they have a better clout over the other players, in the sense over the other stakeholders in the market, like the employees or the supplier, or for that matter even the customer, right? So every company should strive to have a strategic advantage over the external people with whom on whom these people are dependent for resources. When they try to do that, automatically the company would be performing well. The next is the stakeholder theory. When we look at the stakeholder theory, as per this, it is not always about enhancing or improving the interest of the shareholders. The company should always strive to take any decision in such a manner they protect not only the interest of the shareholders, but also the interest of the other stakeholders like the supplier, intermediary, general public, the government, the employees, etc. Next theory that we are going to look at is the transaction cost theory. As per this transaction cost theory, every company enters into a contract with the other entities in order to carry out the business activities. Here what the company is expected to do is, like whenever they want to have a contract with the other party, they should always check, do the cost benefit analysis. Can they do the work on their own, or should they go for getting this service from the external party? They will have to make this cost benefit analysis, and they will have to take a decision, are they going to outsource the activity or are they going to go for the in-house production? This kind of decision should be made. So as per this transaction cost theory, it is about making a decision whether the activities that the business performs, whether it is going to be in-house or whether they are going to outsource, for which they have to perform the cost benefit analysis. And if the benefit that they get because of outsourcing is more, then they will have to go for the outsourcing. They will have to give the job to the external agencies, and if they find out that the benefits that they are going to get, if they are going to do the work in-house, then they will have to do the work in-house within the company itself. So this kind of cost benefit analysis should always be carried out by the company, whether to decide whether to outsource or to go for in-house production. Next, what we have is the political theory. As per this political theory, here if you look at it, the government and the regulatory agencies play a major role with respect to the way the company is run. So somewhere down the line, political entities play a very important role with respect to the way the company is run. There are countries where the government participates in the private organization, they become part of the private organization. So in these cases, what happens, the role the government plays in with respect to the running of the company is very, very high. So political theory is about the influence that the political entities, the regulatory environment and the government has in running the company. They decide the level of corporate governance these companies would be having. Next, let's look at some of the emerging issues that we have with respect to the corporate governance. The emerging issues that we are going to look now, this has been taken from the Deloitte's research report on trends in corporate governance. Actually, they have done this report in the year 2015 in collaboration with Confederation of Indian Industries. Based on this report, we are going to look at the different emerging issues that we have in corporate governance. The first issue that we have to look at is the how independent the independent directors are. This is very, very important. Normally, the Companies Act mandates that there should be independent directors in the case of a public limited company. It is mandatory to have the independent directors. But in reality, when these independent directors are going to sit in the boardroom, how independent these independent directors are going to be in their decision making, because they hold different types of relationship with different people around them in the board. They do have social relationship, they have contractual relationship, they hold different types of relationship. How are they going to handle this conflict of interest? That matters a lot in ensuring that the governance is maintained in the company. The next issue is to do with shareholder democracy versus the stakeholder democracy. If we look at the different laws that are there with respect to the corporate governance, more emphasis have been given to protect the interest of the shareholders than the stakeholders. But nowadays, the media and the public are very particular about protecting the interest of the stakeholders. How far the company is going to take into account the interest of the stakeholders when they take decisions along with the interest of the shareholder. This is one of the most important aspects that has to be looked into. For the reason, it's a very challenging one for the company to take into account the interest of the various stakeholders along with the interest of the shareholders while taking the decisions. Next issue that we are going to look at is about the better boards and diversity. The Companies Act also has clearly mentioned with respect to the selection of the board of directors. They do have rules with respect to the qualification, the ability and the capability that the board of directors are expected to have in order to, so that they can play a very agile and very proactive role. And there is also about having the diversity, having a women director in the board of directors. Now it has become mandatory for different types of companies, which will bring more diversity in the decision making. So how qualified the directors are going to be, how agile and how capable the directors are going to be, matters a lot with respect to following the corporate governance principle. The next is about the risk governance and risk management. The directors play an oversight role. If these directors are going to fail in their oversight role, then this is going to create a problem in the company. So this directors have a huge responsibility of formulating the policies with respect to risk management, and it is their duty to implement all these risk management policies that they have formulated. This is one of the most critical area with respect to the corporate governance. Next is about increased focus on strategy and value creation. The board of directors should ensure that the management and the executives, employees all work for the betterment of the company. In the sense, we did look at in the resource dependency theory that is, as well as in the transaction cost theory, where the company is expected to look at the strategic advantage that they are going to have in all the relationships that they are going to hold with different external parties. So somewhere here they are talking about how the company is going to work to ensure that value is created at each and every stage for the stakeholders as well as the shareholders. And here the board of directors play a major role, and they should ensure that the management, the executives all work towards creating value at each and every activity that they perform. And the next is about increased shareholders accountability. Shareholders have a huge role to play. They are responsible that to check whether the board of directors are performing as per their expectation. So it is very, very important that the shareholders also should be very agile, proactive. They should not be indifferent, and they should voice out. They should participate in annual general meetings, and they should also ensure that whether the company moves in the right direction. So it is also the responsibility of the shareholders to ensure the company is in the right hands. The next is to do with the compensation governance. There had been a lot of media attention and the public outcry towards the compensation that the executives get. Now we have laws in place with respect to the quantum of compensation that these executives get, with respect to the payment ratio. All these are getting streamlined. So compensation governance is also equally important for a company, which is to do with the compensation that the executives and the management would be drawing for performing their work. The next is to do with the information technology governance. We all know that we are in Industry 4 and we are going to move to Industry 5. Technology plays a major role in the activities of all the companies. So this comes with a risk. What risk is? It is to do with the protecting the data and protecting the privacy of the company's database. So somewhere down the line, the board of directors and the management is responsible that there is no security breach with respect to the data, and the data of the company are protected. So this is their duty to ensure that there is a protection of the company's data. Next is about the board performance evaluation. Nowadays there are stringent rules and the laws in place with respect to what are all the criteria and what are all the parameters based on which the directors have to be evaluated. So now the directors' action as well as inactions, they are out for the public to see. So they would be rigorously evaluated, and if they are going to be inefficient, it would be seen by all the stakeholders. Then the last one that we have is to do with the boardroom. When we talk about the boardroom, the directors should work in unison towards the corporate objectives. There should not be any kind of animosity, or there should not be any kind of fight or difference of opinion with respect to the way they run the company. When there are going to be these kinds of animosity or different kinds of opinion on conflict of interest while running the company, somewhere down the line it will result in information asymmetry. So board members are expected to work in unison towards achieving the corporate objectives. So these are all some of the emerging issues which a company has to concentrate on in order to have a very good corporate governance. Thanks for listening.